phansi. Phansi. Phansi ngohlose sabo phansi. Phansi. Mandibulele. Ngokundamkela leli hlakadlanga kusi. Nesidima eninike sona. Tingulo mntana ndikuye. Ndiyayibulela lo ndawo. Ndingumzoxolo makhethi wami. Exhoka. Ngokusebenza ndisebenza eRustenburg. Ndithi ke mna ke manje ngicela phaya ndithi ukwabulawayo phaya eMarikana. Kuba kulapho ndaya khona ndingekho dlakadlaka. Ndawo kanti ndiyokufumana ubudlakadlaka. Ngoku sendinecala linesiswe esecaleni. Bendingacinganga kanjalo. Kodwa ndandicinga uba indawo endiyofumana kuyo imali nditsho ndikwazi ukulungiselela ikhaya lam elingathathi ntweni. Into yapha ibuhlungu kakhulu kuba isebuhlungu nangoku. Nto nayo ndiyambulela uThixo ngoba eneneni ukuba ngaba ukuthanda kwabanye abantu bekufanele ba sisankontoza eziseleni nangoku. Nto nayo uThixo uyakwazi ulenza icebo kuba bakhona abantu abangamathandazo abaye bayiva intlungu yomnye umntu kuba ndikule ndawo njengoku ndinamatyala endingawazima ngabantwana kuba mna ndim lo wafayo, ndim lo wabulawayo, kodwa seyindim namatyala ndingena sona isandla esixhaphe igazi lomnye umntu. Ndikhetha futhi loo nto uyifela kuba ndiyazazi ndimsulwa. Soze nesiphakamisa isandla sam komnye umntu. Kodwa ngoku ndizibona ndisengxakini ngento yaseMarikana. Sinelakhi ke kuba sincediwe kakhulu ngootata abangumagqwetha phaa. uPhrizos, ootata uSebeza kunye nootata uDalimpofu, nootata uMsimanga, nomama uMapoli kunye noRihat. Ngokuza uRihat kakhulu kuba ndandibandisitsho ndisithi ezi picture nezi video nezisayo aziphelelanga, anize neevidiyo ezininzi. Sitsho sikwazi uba nitsho nibone uba le nto eyayisenzeka ayisitha bebehlasela amapolisa. Thina besihamba sisiya emikhukhwini kwiindawo zethu zokuhlala, sigetyekiwe ngaba bantu. Ingeyiyo nto enethemba ndibe ngathi thina sithetha ubuxoki. Ndahlala ndinalo ithemba noba kunini iyozivela inyaniso. Namhlanje ndiye ndivuye xa ndibone sisuka kule ndaba esisuka kuyo, kule ndaba esihleli kulaa ntaba, sisiya kwiindawo zethu zokuhlala esirhamelela amapolisa. Ndandibane ndibuza umbuzo kwiipicture abaziveza kuphela. Ndithi nanga amapolisa amabini naba sisiza. Kutheni singayanga kula mapolisa kanti besihlasela? Kuthiwe mna ndilongwetha mandiyekubuza lo mbuzo. Mayibe ndimo obuzwayo kuphela. Ndandinyamezela loo nto, kodwa ndibe ndinethemba noba kunini izovela inyaniso. Ndihlakadlaka kodwa ubuhlungu kum ndiyaphila, uThixo undenzile ndaphila. Bakhona abantwana babantu abaye bafa, bafela imali engakafumaneki namhlanje. Kodwa lithi khona ithemba lokuba noba ungatsheka abantu abayi-5 ngeke silahle itawo kukho abantu abafayo befela le mali. Noba kungabantu abangaphi okanye abanye bade banqolotyolwe nangobusuku kuba isimo sapha siyasaza sihlala sihleli sikhalaza xa kukhangelwe thina kubanjwe thina ngobusuku kuthiwa hayi ngamalungu am ngeke laa nto ke ipapashwa nopapashwa loo nto leyo ngeke sihoya nohoya siyokhutshwa ngamagqwetha ngemali zawo kodwa bangaba kuthiwe okanye kwalimala umntu wenama seyisaziwa kuthiwa ngabantu behambo abenza loo nto endikubulelayo kukuba sinazo i-supporters kakhulu bayasibona abantu uba asenza nganto okubuhlungu abanye abantwana babantu imizi ngoku ivaliwe yindlala kukho abantu abafelwayo oomama abafelwa ngabantwana babo nanamhlanje bakafumani nesente iloo nini ebanzayo kunye nogovernment wethu ubalalisa kwihotele le izolungiselela uba xa kufike umntu wasendaweni noba kuse-amerika ofuna ukubona aba bantu bafelwa ngabantwana babo okanye ngabayeni babo kuthiwa hayi balala kule hotele batsho bayibone uba hayi kule hotele balala kuyo noko iphezulu isekudidini eliphezulu umntu ulala ebhedini entofontofo yoma-10,000 xa egoduka akanikwa nesente banethemba abantwana babo sabafundisi utya ntoni nomntana nayesiya esikolweni nayebusuku esikolweni intlungu esinayo leyo
It's another one of the very few times that you do feel really shameful about being a South African at this time, and it's such an emotive moment. But I feel like coming from the performing creative arts, I'm here on this panel to extrapolate, to come away from the subject and to find another lens to look at it, to talk about this thing, because ultimately the idea is that almost all of us, I'm sure, if we were here, saw the news, we know the facts, we've seen parts of this footage as well, we've seen and we continue to see many such incidents. And then we sit in a room like this and it's delivered to us as a thing. And we are overwhelmed. I think I can speak for many of us. And the question, I guess, is I'm asking, and it's a question also partly to Rihanna, is what is this thing? What is this thing he was making? What is this film he was making? Because it's in the guise of a documentary. He calls it some of his interviews a political thriller. It has all the elements of a thriller. It has betrayal, villains, a very large scope, a very large, more epic event. But this is real, and it has happened not such a long time ago, and it continues to happen in various scales. So I guess there's both a triumph, it's both a triumph and a discomfort. And I think it poses some very important questions to us. Working as an artist in the 1970s and 80s, where it was very clear the translation of our performing creative skills was in the field of worker theatre, of agitprop, of propaganda, of theatrical propaganda. There was a whole range of different avenues of conscious, that's what it was called, conscientizing theatre. And afterwards, we bought into the dream, and we bought into the romance of the individual, and making these individual works, and where the personal became so important. And you see something like this today, and it prods the question to what extent our art education and to what extent this impacts on the way we are teaching and the way we are researching and the way we receive, and to what extent we are connecting the way we are learning about art and the way we're making art with actually what is happening in this country. So there are two questions in there, and one is squarely for Riyadh, what kind of a world is this? And the other one is for us to figure out where does this put us as art makers and art educators. Thanks.
Yeah, well, I don't want to respond yet to Jay, but as people speak. But I just want to say something very brief. It's difficult to watch because none of us could imagine, this was unimaginable, that our own government could do this to the people. It's stated that it served, it's catapulted it to power. After the ANC became a hegemonic force in the 90s. And I think in many ways that's why it's so painful to watch, because you know, I heard Johnny Steinberg talking about, I haven't read his piece, but people talking out, well, the mine workers must have been guilty of something. They must have been up to some mischief, and that's why this happened. It couldn't be that our government could do this, because if our own government could do this to our own people, then what the hell are we living through? What is South Africa? What is our government?
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Russell, I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the Center for African Studies. Thanks for this film, because I think it allows a lot of people who were not acquainted to what happened and the grim events of how the miners were subjected to violence. Is it working or?
Yes, it's working.
I think the challenge is with South Africa is it's difficult to see who was responsible for this in terms of pointing at the politicians, because I think there's so much power that is left with big business and capital and all that, to an extent that even people like Zuma and others, they're just symbolic figures. And at the same time, because the kind of violence unleashed towards the miners is driven by capital, so to what extent are they really, the state as it is, responsible for this in terms of being able to stop it and so forth? Because what we get from the trajectory of the events is how business is such a kind of leverage, which is almost brings in violence to the whole process. And I'm just wondering, how do we begin to understand where South Africa is in the post-apartheid area, the relationship between business and the state and the citizens? I think we must start thinking about those relationships if we are able to understand where this is going.
Ghana people, when it was, I think, at that stage, very unpopular to pledge solidarity, which is the EFF. So I am the member of the working committee of the provincial structure of the EFF. Mine is a comment. My comment is, I think, the screen, in fact, I'm seeing it for the second time, which I saw it yesterday, when it was also presented in Kailicha. Mine is the comment that says, I think this is the demonstration that the capitalism as a system has failed and is failing. I think that is a very important note to make, because many a times we hear that socialism has failed, is failing. Never do you hear that capitalism in South Africa, it is failing. And I think it is unfortunate that it requires to some of us that more people should die before we can comprehend and accept that capitalism is failing us. People are poor, staying in squatter camps, in very unhealthy conditions. People in prison, they are subjected with treatments that are inhumane because the capitalism system is failing. I think it is the time that we decide that we should not wait that until hundreds or thousands of people should be killed in the manner the Marikana people were killed. We must take a stand. We must take a stand that is not necessarily interested on advancing the political interest, but to revolt against the system. I think mine it is to encourage the House to propagate the word that we need to see South Africa as an example of a country that has a capitalist system that is failing its people. And that is failing, more importantly, its majority that have been subjected animalistic treatment over decades and centuries of years. I think for that, I would like to also say EFF, for many reasons, many people see it as an organization that is an extreme, that is a reaction in terms of anger. But the reality is, at this particular moment, because we are heading towards elections and we are left with only a few days, for us to be able to unseat this capitalistic system, we need to have an alternative that speaks our language. That is very important, because at this particular, even if we are going to have other political parties, but now we have EFM, I think I would like to make that
It's
suggestion.
very important to understand that massacres of the kind that took place in Marikana historically have had a huge impact, and sometimes over a long period. I'm thinking of the massacre of Amritsar in 1919 in India, which mobilized millions of Indians to resist against British colonialism. I'm thinking of the massacre of Moeda by the Portuguese in 1960, I think it was, 1960 in northern Mozambique, which mobilized support for Frelimo. The massacre of Wiriamu towards the end of that struggle. What I'm suggesting is that massacres, when they take place, are a manifestation of state power in all its nakedness. And the danger for a ruling class or for a government, for the state, is that people see what the real nature of the state actually is. I'm not suggesting what will happen about that, but I'm suggesting that there is an enormous political potential when the state behaves in this way. The second thing I want to say is that there is a definition of democracy which says that the democratic moment is when relations of property are threatened by those without property. And for me, the strike in Marikana is exactly that. It is a potential democratic moment which was intensely dangerous for the nature of the state that we have in South Africa at the moment. Thank you.
So what's your name? First in the front here.
Sorry, I'm Colin Darch, I'm from the Democratic Governance and Rights Forum.
In response to the first comment made by the first gentleman.
Jay.
Yeah, with the very profound comment of art and its social responsibility, that you say normally as an artist, or as an art practitioner, you look as yourself as an individual in the works that you make. But for me, this is one of the best films I've seen in probably the last 15 years or so. There's been a lot of hoo-ha recently about the Oscars and the film that just won an Oscar, but this for me now, in contemporary society, this is, I think, the most important film in contemporary society, and it should be taken to greater levels and shown on a worldwide scale to the responsibility that we have as artists to people and to freedom. Well done.
The question that rises to me is what does freedom of expression mean in the Bill of Rights and in the Constitution? And what I found was, looking at the form, was how democratic is South Africa, and if one considers pre-94 the regime, the apartheid regime, and how far we actually progressed into the new South Africa, and what is this concept of democracy mean to the general majority of everyone living here? Is it just a myth? is it tangible? The other point which I was considering was if everyone is charged with murder, the workers have those who actually were murdered by the police, were they actually compensated? Were their families acknowledged in any real way, or was it just dismissed because they're not actually, it's like they're subhuman, that they're not, so what kind of reparations happened? Has there been anything, any retribution done to the deceased and, well, those that have been injured?
What type of work, or I mean, really, the purpose? What motivated me really was, following the massacre, I was traumatized. I was shaken with anger after watching those images, and I knew, given their political marginalisation, the fact that UMCU was not supporting this strike, they don't support unofficial strikes, the power of NUM, the ANC, COSATU, these people were really very much out in the cold. And as a socialist, and as a documentary filmmaker who attempts to give voice, an important part of my task is to give voice to those who don't have voice. I felt obliged to stand by them and do what I could for them. And in the course of, I was waiting for the footage to come to the commission, and I thought that would save me going through all the hours of footage, cost it takes to go through the broadcasters. And it wasn't coming, and I had to start searching for myself. And managed to find some very revealing footage, particularly from one broadcaster. And after, which I showed on the 16th, also released it as it was shot to the press and the commission. And that really, for me, confirmed what the mine workers were saying. That they'd been attacked, that they'd been ambushed, that this notion of them attacking the police was nonsense. And this is how the police justified the shooting at scene 1 that we saw on TV. And the most critical, as a political animal, as a political activist, it's far more interesting for me to look at the consequences. But actually, what was the task required? What is the task required now? Is that we try and show our truth as activists, as workers, to the world about what actually happened. And rather to focus on what happened rather than the why. Because looking, it's a strong argument to be willing to argue with the facts of the matter. And the film in many ways is purposefully restrained in order to allow people as much as possible to make up their own minds to actually what went down that day. Because I'm sure most people who came into this room, and I wanted to come to this room, into this room to watch this film, is because they had very real questions about actually what happened. And hopefully we've left you a bit clearer. So the other point is, I attempted to make a definitive film here. Something which will hold for 5, 10, 15, 20 years' time, so our children can remember what happened. So we never forget what happened, and we never allow it to happen again. Because what happened was something that should never happen in a democracy. We can't call ourselves a democracy and allow this to happen. We are in serious trouble, and we've got to go back to what we did in the 80s. And this is where the EFF are important for me, because I think it's the most important youth movement to emerge since the 1980s. And the new party that I'm interested in, the Workers' Party, without it, without the youth, without the energy of the youth, it's not going to go very far. We need to see, as in the 1980s, workers and youth coming together, because when they did in 1984 and 1 million people stayed away, we knew that was the beginning of the end of that system we were fighting against. The responsibility of the state. Yeah, I don't, this is the argument really that's in the left wing, very abstract thinking around the role of the world economy and the power of the capitalist, the international capitalist class, which makes our governments meaningless, that they're really there to serve the purposes of global capital. And therefore, where we've really got to focus our energy is there. Yes, at a thinking level, an abstract level, absolutely right. But what we allow to happen and get our state to get away with is mediated. It's mediated by our level of mobilization, it's mediated by how we're able to mobilize public opinion, how we're able to develop our own media, how we're able to challenge the mainstream media. So the state is a very important area of contestation, which I don't think we can give up in any way. And really, it's the state which allowed this to happen. It's the state which gave the final sanction to the police. And I believe that happened at the cabinet level. And I believe that happened because the ANC, as a movement, as a genuine mass movement, that's peopled by, in the main, very good people with good intentions, with good politics, with good histories, have allowed their organisation to be captured by a policy of its own creation. And that policy is a policy of black economic empowerment. And we now got a handful of moguls, of tycoons, black tycoons, who control that organisation, and they're centred around the cabal of Jacob Zuma. We must never forget that, and we must never stop telling the ANC that. And I don't believe it's going to be able to renew itself or reinvigorate itself, have that level of introspection until it's in opposition. So yes, vote no, vote tactically, vote no for the ANC. I'll leave it up to you how you're going to vote. This is not I would agree, the meeting to start talking about who we're going to vote for. The freedom, I think yes, last couple of points. This is about freedom of expression. This is freedom of assembly, freedom to strike, the discourse. I was talking to someone here who's doing an archive of Marikana. Is she here? There she is, yeah. Hopefully she'll come in. But the discourse around this in the lead up to the massacre. These are barbarians. These are uneducated people. These are tribalists. These are sexists. These are chauvinists. It goes on, and a heap of abuse that was poured onto these workers, and in the main, by the likes of Blade and Samandi, these so-called communists. A horrible, nasty group of Stalinists. Okay? Who justified this, and this was echoed by the NUM leadership, who are also in the party, calling for these workers, for the army to be brought in. They made, in the discourse, these workers subhuman in order to justify their shooting. And that's how that discourse worked. A compensation. We're having a collection today. Up until a couple of weeks ago, we've been collecting money for the widows. At NUMSA, National Special Congress, we raised $400,000. We got $50,000 from a very wealthy individual. These widows have got nothing. The workers are demanding that 12.5 gets paid to them every month. For over 2 years, for just under 19, 20 months now, they have received no income. They get nicely fed, whether at the commission, and put in a nice hotel, but when they go home, They sleep on the floor now. They've got no food for their children. Their children can go to schools with longmans, longmen are paying for their education, but when they come home, what are they being fed? And we've got to keep the widows going to the day we get those policemen in court. And that's why August 16th and the action we take, and the action we're suggesting, is from now to August 16th. 16th of every month, we want everybody in UCT and UWC to be wearing black. On August 16th, we want you to wear black. On August 16th, we want you to do something on campus, to take an action. And we're going to do that around the country, and we can do it. Because now we've got the biggest trade union in the country backing us for this action, this local, this national action, and also international action. So there is no compensation. The mine workers have been out on strike for 3 months. Today's collection we're going to have in the room, the widows have said, please, the mine workers' strike is our struggle. Collect money for them. They're starving. At least we're getting fed in the hotel, and we've got still got some cows and sheep at home. These mine workers, many of them have got no sheep or cows or any other income to support them, and they're determined to stay out. So tonight's collection is for the mine workers and the mine workers' strike.
I think I have concern about the way you portray the police in the film, and this thing of, it's about what happened, not so much about why it happened. And we keep talking about police brutality, but I'm kind of wondering about these police people you're giving so much agency to, and it's obviously the reaction is very negative. But I think what's really missing is we don't really go into who's pulling the strings. So it becomes, it's like everyone's in complete agreement about police. And I wonder what the lives of those police men themselves is, because they seem to be puppets in the hands of people who are pulling the strings, but then we kind of don't see so much or talk so much about who are these people pulling the strings, who's the person on the other side of the phone. Yeah, so I was a bit uncomfortable with that kind of discourse, which is, everyone's in agreement about the police, but yeah, so that was my question.
My reflection, I think, comes up, Terry, in response to your initial sense that, what have we done, and of course it came out at Marikana as well, the miners wanted to know what have they really done. To a large degree, I think it's a perplexing question that our South Africans and that were born under apartheid have always been asking, and it remains perplexing. Up until now, I'm sure those who have found an answer would like to know, what have you found, what have you done? With Marikana, it kind of shifts the what have we done, for one to ask, like, what have we done when? Or what haven't we done at a particular point in time, Because it just comes up, and I guess certain people will be struck by the piece, either as, let's say, ANC people or people that have never been ANC, right? So I would, for instance, be struck in a different way because I've never been an ANC supporter, and I'm not disillusioned by what is happening because I expect this to happen. If you think of the National Forum where you looked at who was going to represent the black majority that was oppressed under a non-white environment, for the ANC, of all people, and there were more than one persuasions of ideologies, for them to emerge as the sole representative of historical dispossession and oppression. How the hell would we not have expected such nonsense to happen if all the other persuasions were squeezed out of the broader picture? And who the hell created the context for the ANC to emerge in such a way that we didn't even question what the hell was wrong, So for me, when you ask, what have we done? It is, what have we done when? It's like what a time to ask this question. Thank you.
I've been asked for one last one before we cut.
I don't think we can make a distinction between Marikana and the politics of South Africa. I don't think we can separate the two. Another thing is that finding ourselves in indirect oppression of whiteness in South Africa. It's something we have to be honest about. Another point is that black politics, Marikana, is a land question. So I don't think we can have these gatherings and not speak anything about land, dispossessed, defeated black people. Secondly, we can't be silent about EFF because it is the only possibility outside this nightmare we find ourselves in. I think before we come here and discuss stuff, let's be honest about ourselves, let's be honest about the reality and ideal world we want to live in as a whole. Yeah.
I think we have to call it.
My name is Nadisa. First of all, ngifuna ukuthi kubhuti siyabulele. Ngiyabathanda abantu abamnyama, ngiyazithanda nami, ngiyeke nasibonisa uba ukunyamezela i-situation apho kungekho bomi khona. Yinto leyo esisithuko kubantu abamnyama ukusukela ekuqaleni kufika belungu apha eAfrika. Ndithi bhuti enkosi nditachekile yabo. Ndithi enkosi. And also, I want to address the politics that are happening right now because, history is a contested space itself. So when someone says that we must not advocate EFF policies and politics, which are essentially about addressing a situation that created Omzokolo, then we are moving at a space where black pain is not addressed sufficiently. And our calls for freedom are stunted as is, So I am not of the opinion that we can just, without historical appreciation of the black encounter and the white encounter that would eventually create capitalism, which will create a situation where Obuti Umabush, Nobuti Umzokolo would find themselves in that situation that they found themselves in, without addressing, firstly, like Nico said, the white left and its incorporation into a white supremacist order that would create a situation that would create Umzokolo enezalindlela zenazo. Ndiyabulela futhi kakhulu ngifuna uthetha nawe because azothetha nabelungu because abanye babo ba also part of the order created you.
Informal after this, we'll call it a day. Unless you want to make one last comment, Rehan, I think we should. We've been on long enough.
I would like Sokolo as well. He would like to say a few things briefly, and he would like to be translated. I don't need that. The problem. We don't have a smoking gun when it comes to direct political involvement, direct cabinet involvement. All we know is Susan Shabangu has gone into cabinet to discuss this issue. She agrees with Cyril Ramaphosa. It needs to be characterised as a criminal event or process that is happening there, not as a labour dispute. I believe that was tabled as the email. The cabinet minutes have been requested many months ago and they have still not been forthcoming. In a film like this, you weaken it when you put conjecture. I wanted to know and put forward what we actually knew had happened. I didn't want to be seen to be hooking in to some conspiracy theory. Hopefully. Also, in documentaries, it's not about answering all the questions, dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's. Most people in this room, who I ask, when they ask me, who made that phone call to Mbembe on the 13th, I ask them, who do you think made the phone call? And they all get it. They all get the answer. And that's what makes actually documentaries riveting. You keep on asking yourself, as you're watching, the questions in your head, you're asking yourself constantly questions, because it's often what you can't see that you're asking questions about. I see you've got your hand up. The police. There are a number of policemen we know, or certainly two, that have had breakdowns. And one who's going to come, they're still to come before the commission. One of them is the guy who's the white policeman who's got the telescopic gun, who's saying ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. You see him twice in the film. He's been off work for a year after that. People, and this, what it comes down to, comrade, you know, before we're political analysts and activists and intellectuals and about knowing what the ANC will do, I actually believed that there would be a time when the ANC would turn against its own people. But we're humans first. And tell me any human who's got his heart in place and can watch people who I've called comrades sanction the mowing down of other human beings. It's not human, man, to be able to watch that and not be affected, not feel disgusted. It's not in our nature to kill each other. That's in the nature of the people who lead invasions and wars, the 1% that someone spoke about earlier. So, the comrades from the EFF, please, we need as many activists as possible. Take this film. I challenge you, take this film. Don't show it to as many people as you can. Because I know who I'm voting for. I know who anybody who's got, who wants to give the ANC a bloody nose, who's got a thinking brain, who they will vote for. And you've got to assume that intelligence is in this room. And go out and show it. Champion the film. Start talking about it. What have you done about it? This film's been out for 2 months. You've said nothing. That worries me, actually. That worries me about the EFF. Because once you get this 20, 30 people in Parliament, are you going to start staying quiet again? Are you going to go like the rest of them? Because that's what Parliament does to people who believe in Parliament, from where I come from. And I'm not too sure whether you're clear enough politically, theoretically, to withstand the pressure that Parliament's going to put on you as an organisation. So the question for me about the EFF is, the question still remains and only will be resolved following, hopefully, a really good showing for you. So a mumbler to the EFF, yes, we've got to question white supremacist left thinking and so on and so forth in our own ranks. There is no holy cows in our movement, and there can never be again, because we allowed holy cows, we allowed ourselves not to question these people. We stayed quiet for 10 years when the economy was growing. We all retreated into our nice, cosy little individual lives, and this is what we got for it. Thank you. He's going to...
And this is what I'm going kuphela nje endizobana ndiyithetha mna ndiye ndizibone thina abantu bamnyama nditsho nakuThixo ndinoba ndiyathandaza ndithi Thixo wena wasenza ukubangela uba thina usipeyinte ngepeyinti emnyama abanye abamhlophe ukwazi bapeyinta ngepeyinti emhlophe kuba namhlanje sekunjinji kungoba bona baye bacinge babangooThixo kuthi bakwazi uthatha abo nokwana baye wabenza uThixo abasondeze ubani babe nezinto zokona okanye babe nemfundwanyana engcono kwabanye abantu bazicinge bake ngokona bangabantu basiqengela amathe.
I would like to thank, first of all, I will belong. The second thing, I would like to thank God for the life that He has given me, and I also came to understand that there are those who are fortunate that God has painted them to be white.
sesinje kungoba abantu esibakhethayo baye basilibala ukuba bakhethwe sithi bazixelele uba bona bangothixo ngeke baphinde basuke kwizihlalo zabo. Inyanzelise loo nto indlala ebantwini abamnyama.
Now we are like this because there are those who think that they are gods, that they will never get removed from the seats. They think that they are gods that are black.
Kodwa ke thina ke siyayazi uba okwakwenzeke kuthi futhi ke ndinethemba loba angeke uyazi indlela ungakayihambi. Okwesibini, uba ngaba uqhatha umuntu ongafundanga aze ayibone le nto uyenza abe engafundanga, lo muntu ahlala uyazi uba noba ungaphinde uzenini uzomxelela ngento uba inantsi indlela akaphinde akuthembe ngoba uyakwazi uba ulimenemene elikhulu.
Most importantly, you will not know the road until you walk it. And there are those who think that they can be able to mislead the uneducated. But you can mislead the uneducated. But once the uneducated catches you that you were misleading him, the day he discovers that you will regret it.